secretary of APABA-DC, and I am co-founder and principal of my own legal recruiting firm. I am a lawyer by training. I was a commercial restructuring and refinance attorney in the last recession, and left practice in 2011, and went into professional development for attorneys. I was at GW Law School as a career advisor, and then in the administration at the law school, all on sort of attorney professional development and helping lawyers, graduates and alums navigate their careers. And then I founded my own legal recruiting company at the end of 2017. So that's just a little bit about my background. I'm pretty informal with presentations, so I do have some materials here, but I think that given that we have just 1 hour, I welcome questions. Feel free to unmute and ask a question or type a question into the chat. And we'll try to manage that and get to you. So it doesn't have to be me talking for 45 minutes or waiting for the Q&A. I mean, feel free to jump in and make this session as productive as possible for you all. So with that, I have just some quick tips and sort of reminders. I don't think anything in the first part of the presentation is going to be new to you about connecting and nurturing relationships, especially now in the time of COVID. And then I think probably the bulk of our conversation, or a lot of our conversation, might be focused around using LinkedIn and how to really maximize the technology, and then obviously questions. But like I said, feel free to interrupt if you have questions. I'm happy to have discussion. I'm not committed to getting through every single slide just because they're here. So the first thing I thought it would be a good reminder for all of us is that, it's a good time right now to sort of take stock of your current networks and reconnect with the people that maybe you haven't been in contact with. And I think it's easy to take our contacts for granted, but being separated from everyone really does force you to look inside. And so one of the first things I often tell people who are either often who are job searching or thinking about job searching is just to take stock of who you know. I have a slide later on that says about up to 80% of jobs are filled, or management level jobs are filled based on your network. Someone who knows someone is usually the way it happens, rather than a direct personal contact is usually a contact of a contact, so a second connection, if you will. So think about, who are your closest contacts? These are your deep professional contacts, people that you probably would see every day if we were in the office. And remember to check in with them, right? So it's not just about contacting them for work, but checking in and seeing how they're doing. Ask yourself how diverse your contacts are, right? So think about whether all of your contacts are in a specific industry or sector. This is definitely my weakness. Almost all of my contacts happen just to be in my little realm of attorney professional development and career coaching. And I could be better about expanding my contacts outside of that, my regular professional contacts. And then, of course, think about, where do you want to be? Where do you want to cultivate contacts so that they can help leverage your career and be an advocate for you several steps down the line, right? Maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years down the line, and target those contacts and begin strengthening those relationships. And I'll sort of talk a little bit about how to do that now. But I think it's useful to just sit down and think about people maybe that you haven't connected with. And I've found that during COVID, it's a great time to check in with these people, right? People who you're close to, or maybe even people you've lost contact with. I've gotten a surprising number of emails from people that I haven't heard from in a year or 2 years, and it's always a really pleasant surprise. And so you can be that person to check in with people, colleagues and other professional contacts you have. And you don't have to have a reason. It can just be, I wanted to see how you're doing. I think given the times that we're in, that in and of itself is a great reason to see how people are doing. And then, of course, with any professional network, ask how you can help them, right? It's a two-way street. So it's not just about I need something right now, but that the contexts that are most productive for your professional work and for your professional career are those that are deep and that you've taken some time to nurture, so that when you do need something, it's easy to ask and the information will be reliable. I have a sort of funny one here that my husband was making fun of. So there's a lot of events like this happening right now. These Zoom calls and webinars, and it's easy to dial in and sort of listen and do other things. And I can appreciate that. I do that as well. But I think that our attention span for conference calls, or our ability, or our perceived ability to multitask while we have a phone on speaker, is different than when you're really actively engaged with video. And so I would encourage any of you, whether it's a conference call or a webinar, if the video is turned on, that you turn it on, and not have the picture of you there. I mean, it's not possible at all times, but if you can do it, do it. I mean, that's how you're going to connect, right? There is an aspect of the video component that allows you to connect with participants or the panelists in a way that just doesn't happen. So I can tell you right now, as a presenter, I can see that there are 10 other people on the line, and I don't feel very connected to any of you because I can't see any of you. I can't see what you're doing. I can't see your facial features. I can't get any visual feedback. Oh, look, I got a video out of that. Thank you. Right, so it feels like I'm just sort of talking into the abyss. But if you can see people, then I feel more connected too, right? And you might feel connected to me because you can see me, but you can also see each other. And I think with the sort of fatigue of video conferencing, people have gotten really used to just like turning off the camera. But it is another way to connect, and it's a way to connect with each other. So you can also chat with other participants, or look at the attendee list if it's up, and pull the names down of other participants and connect with them. So one analogy to this is like, when you're at a conference and you go to a conference, you can either attend all of the educational sessions, sit there and like take notes, and then go home. And the value there is then the content that you absorbed. But I think the majority of us will say, when we're at a professional conference, the real sort of benefit are the people that you meet, are the people that you're talking to, are the ideas that are shared in the hallway before the session or after the session, or the coffee breaks, right? And that is much harder to do on a Zoom webinar, but it's still possible. You just have to sort of readjust and take a little bit more initiative. So one is turning on that video. Two is trying to make an effort to connect with participants or the panelists after the call, right? So sending them an email saying, hey, I really enjoyed that. Wanted to continue the conversation offline, or I heard in the introductions that you work here, I've been interested in your organization, whatever that might be. But thinking about the times after that webinar or after that video call as the time in the hallway, as the coffee break time, so that it's not just an internal experience for you, but so you're taking that experience and trying to connect. So thank you for those that have turned on your video. I do appreciate it. But I think, of course, LinkedIn is a huge component, and we sort of advertise this as leveraging LinkedIn. And so I have some LinkedIn tips mixed throughout. I use LinkedIn a lot, and I recognize that because of that, I know LinkedIn pretty well. I mean, I think I'm pretty well versed, but I also know that you all may not use it as often as I do, or at all. So please, if you have questions on LinkedIn, do ask. If I'm talking too quickly, or if there's a feature that you wanted to know about, please ask. So the things that I have planned for LinkedIn are how to find and target contacts, how to use and really maximize the job search feature, and then I have a few tips on LinkedIn profiles. But please let me know if you have other questions. So I'm going to just share my LinkedIn screen so you can all see that. I think you can all see now, yes? Okay, so obviously when you log into LinkedIn, it looks like this. Your LinkedIn might look a little bit different because I have some recruiting features on my LinkedIn, but generally it looks like this. And so let's say you are looking, you do your audit of your contacts and you think, there are some people in either different sectors or different companies that I really want to get to know, or maybe you're just actually trying to find a contact at another company. LinkedIn is pretty good at that, and you can do those searches without being a premium subscriber. And so there's a few ways you can search. One is, let's say we just want to, sorry, I meant to, if you just click in the search bar, you can choose what section of LinkedIn you want to search in. So I'm going to choose people. And then from here, you can type in, let's say I want to choose people by their title. Let's use counsel as the search. So you can see all people with counsel. LinkedIn sort of ranks people by how they're connected to you. So the more contacts you have, the sort of, the way your ranking is sort of first contacts and then second contacts. We can choose just to find people in DC, and you can type in DC. These are popping up because they're just major cities, and LinkedIn knows that those are the cities that I often search. And you can sort of see, okay, here are some people with counsel in their title or somewhere in their profile, and they've identified Washington, DC as their area, the DC metro area. From there, you can narrow more. You can narrow to just first connections. So someone that you've met before and connected with on LinkedIn. Someone who knows someone, or a third connection, right? Someone who knows someone who knows someone. You can search by company. So, if you wanted to find someone at DOJ, you can do that and it'll funnel that down. Or you can click all filters and you can see even more. So this is where you can narrow by school here. If you wanted to find an alum, for example, if you think you know someone in common, etc. You can even start to search by name or title if you wanted to do that. So that's a nice way to find specific contacts that you think you might want to connect with. And of course, LinkedIn does this nice job of telling you who you have shared connections with. You may, though, say, okay, well, I don't, I actually want to find someone at a specific organization. So let's say you wanted to find someone at Northrop Grumman. You can search for Northrop and their company page will come up here. And there's a lot of nice information that LinkedIn provides here. You get some just general information. You get a link to your website. You get to see if you know anyone who works there. Companies have sort of different, the depth of their presence on LinkedIn is different, but a big company like Northrop, you can click on the about, it tells you a little bit about the company. They tend to write these with a recruiting eye. So, you get the sort of what's it like to work here. You can see what jobs they have posted. And the job postings on LinkedIn could be ones that the company has decided to post on LinkedIn and you can apply through LinkedIn, or it could be linked to an external job application site that they run. So you'll find both. And then you can come down and find people. And I really like this people feature because you can come in and then say, okay, I only want to find people at Northrop in Washington, DC, and people that went to George Mason, and then it'll filter that down. Or you could say, I want to find people, who are counsel, and it'll narrow that down, right? Now there's 11 people with counsel in their title who went to George Mason, who live in DC. that are at Northrop, and here they are. Okay, so it's a nice way to use the sort of a funneling feature if there's a specific organization you want to target. It's a nice way to find alums as well, because you could type, instead of Northrop, you could type in your alma mater, for example, and begin to narrow and find fellow alums on LinkedIn. I have a question here. I'm always reluctant to search for folks on LinkedIn because they can see that I've searched for their names. Am I overthinking it? I think you are overthinking it. At this point, I think almost all professionals are on LinkedIn. Ask yourself when was the last time you looked at who looked at your profile, and then ask yourself what you thought of that, right? So I probably do it more than all of you because I'm a recruiter, but I look at it and I just think, oh, that's interesting. And sometimes I think, oh, I want to connect with this person, right? I never have had the experience where I look at the profile and I think, why is that person looking at my profile? And even if I did, I think my natural instinct would be just to click on their profile and look at it, right? And then what? Like, do I think less of this person? I personally don't. I can tell you that most of my colleagues in the recruiting world don't. I'd love to hear what you all think. I mean, if you saw someone who looked at your profile, do you have a negative or a positive association with that?
So I'm happy to share. I have this extreme reluctance to search for people on LinkedIn, and I don't know where it came from. It feels like I'm stalking people, and I recognize that this might just be my own personal problem, but I feel real anxiety about it, that they might think I'm looking at their profile. But as I sort of continue to, try to make myself more active in, minority bar organizations and other organizations, I realize people do look for me just to know who I am. Actually, if I meet people through on another board, of course it's natural. People want to know what I do. And so I'm beginning to feel less anxiety. Oh, and Jennifer says you can choose to be invisible. Oh, I didn't even know you could do that.
You can choose to have people not see that you've looked at them, but that means that you also cannot see who's looked at your profile.
So it's a two-way.
So it works both ways. Yep.
Got it.
Yep.
And I'd love to hear from other folks on the call. Everybody here is an attorney. We've all had to look for jobs and, have been in that position. Do other folks have thoughts that they'd feel comfortable sharing?
I know that anytime I see that someone looked at my profile, the first thing I want to know is where do they work and are there any openings over there? But the other thing, I guess, is that I know that if I click on somebody, somebody's going to click on me. So, am I self-conscious about it? Maybe is my LinkedIn profile going to look good to that person? That's part of the self-conscious thing.
Well, good. We'll talk about making sure your LinkedIn profile does look good, right? I think that's part of it. I mean, if we think about what LinkedIn is for, it's for professional networking, right? So Purnima, to your point, I think there's the sort of like stalking feeling, I think might come from earlier social media days where, on some platforms, the information you post is much more personal. But it tends to be, I think, that LinkedIn, especially for attorneys, is pretty professional. I mean, you have control over everything you post on LinkedIn. And, I think most attorneys limit it to your professional, it sort of looks like a abbreviated resume or a CV. And the point is so that people can find out who you are, right? That's why I'm on LinkedIn. My purpose of having a profile is because I know people might look at it. So I think, one good point here is that if you don't feel good about your profile, then you might have some reticence. And then we can correct that by having a good profile. But the second is really, if you think about the purpose of LinkedIn, it really is so that people can find you. So I will completely disclose that yesterday, Purnima sent me the list of registrants for this webinar, and I looked up about 80% of the participants on LinkedIn. I didn't have time to get through the whole list, but the first thing I did when I saw the list was I just typed the names into LinkedIn and looked at your profiles. That gives me a better sense of who's attending. That's the purpose of LinkedIn, right? Or if any of you have had conference calls with people you've not met before, do you tend to look at do you look for them on LinkedIn before you have a call with them or you have a meeting with them? Have any of you used LinkedIn in that way? I have a yes. Yeah. Right. So it's no different, right? I mean, you're going there to see what this person is about. And so I think that if they see that you've searched them, if you're in the same industry, it's an opportunity to connect because they might look at you and then you could connect with them. If it's someone in a different industry, then you can sort of say, okay, this is interesting. Do I want to branch out or not? I think a different question that I often get is, okay, well, who should I connect with, right? Like, what if I get requests to connect with people and I don't know them and I'm not sure why they're connecting? And then I think that's a personal decision as to whether you want to be connected with them. I think in early days of LinkedIn, my advice was don't connect with people that you've not met in person, because by virtue of being connected with them, people see that. LinkedIn has gotten so big at this point that I almost think that that's not quite as relevant anymore. I mean, I think the majority of my contacts I have more than 500 contacts on LinkedIn, and the majority of my contacts also have more than 500 contacts. I don't know anyone who's scrolling through each other's contacts. Like, it takes a lot of time to do that. And so I think, but that is a personal comfort thing. The benefit of being more connected on LinkedIn is that you will see more content and you can reach more people, and you'll have more contacts in common. On the other hand, one of the things that people do on LinkedIn is they'll email you and say, hey, I see that you're connected to Kim, who works at Northrop, for example. Can you make an introduction? And if you don't really know them closely, then it puts you in a position where you have to say, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And you can say that, of course. But that's sort of a more personal decision, whether you're going to connect with people who you haven't met before. Any other questions on searching for contacts or people? Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my PowerPoint here. Once you find people, you want to send an invitation or a message to them. The timing for this really depends on what works well for you. Typically, when I meet someone in person or on a webinar, I'll send invitations immediately after. So I'll couple it with a thank you. Thanks so much for attending. Thanks so much for presenting. Great meeting you. I'll write that in an email perhaps, and then I'll send an invitation after. So it's just sort of stacked in their inbox, and then I don't need to worry about drafting a separate in-message. If I don't have their email address, I'll find them on LinkedIn and send the message on LinkedIn. And then that's a way to connect with them, right? The benefit, I think, of LinkedIn too is that it's easier to follow people throughout their career, because if you just have their static email address for the job they're in right now, as soon as they move, you can lose track of them. But people tend to update their own LinkedIn profiles as their career evolves, and so you sort of stay connected with them throughout. Okay, job searching. I think we have at least a few people here who mentioned job searching. And so I do have some tidbits here. I'll go through some of these stats rather quickly, but like I said, there was a pretty informal survey done by this gentleman, Lou Adler, who writes for LinkedIn. So obviously there's a bias there. But based on the survey, this is the 2016 survey, almost 80% of management jobs were filled via someone in their professional network. And it usually was a second connection, so a friend of a friend. And you can sort of see the different types of ways people look for jobs, right? So when you're actively looking, whether you're employed or whether you're not employed and actively looking, the two main ways that job seekers look to find jobs are just submitting applications and reaching out to their professional contacts. For those who are already employed and then tend to find a position to transition to, they weren't necessarily looking, it is almost always through their professional network, right? So you can get a sense of that there. Two questions here. when you get a chance, how many recommendations do you think we need on LinkedIn? Curious about applying for jobs using the apply feature. Great question. I'm going to talk about both of those things in a minute. So let me just fly through some of these next slides. The next 3 slides are just some statistics on how hiring managers or recruiters use LinkedIn and also just social networks. They surveyed a bunch of in-house recruiters, so recruiters that are at companies looking to make the hire, so HR departments. And over half of them say they look the person up online. So probably they just Google the person and they see what comes up. And so your presence on the internet has an impact. So for those of you who have some reticence about, oh, people seeing my LinkedIn profile, if I Google you, ideally, your sort of company page with your professional profile or your LinkedIn profile should be one of the first few links, right? What you probably don't want is like a rogue Facebook post from 7 years ago to be the first link, right? And that you can control. Like you have a lot of control over your LinkedIn profile, and that can be one of the first links that come up. But you do want to know what other people see when they look for you. And so I tell everyone, especially if you're about to be on a job search, to Google yourself in a new incognito window, and even better if you can get to a public computer somewhere that's not your own, that hasn't followed all of your cookies and past searches. See what the internet has to say about you, because that's what people are looking at when they see you. I can tell you as a recruiter, anytime I get a resume, I look at the person's profile on LinkedIn, and I might just type their name into Google and see what comes up. So you want to be aware of that, your internet presence as well. So job searching. Let's switch back to the 2 questions I have were recommendations and whether to apply. Okay, so let's go back to LinkedIn. So in the jobs feature, which is here, there are several aspects to the jobs feature. You can search just like a traditional search. So let's say we want to search for counsel, the title counsel, and we want to do it. I'm going to pick DC because that's where I am. Okay. So here we can see the various searches that come, the various positions that have come up. You can, of course, narrow it down even further by date posted, by the company, by the experience level. The experience levels on LinkedIn don't perfectly match the legal profession. So, probably for most of you who are on the line, you're going to want something in the director or executive level. You're clearly not going to be looking for an internship, but it's there. I tend to not really filter on experience level just because it doesn't coincide well with legal. And then here's this apply button that's, I think Tina was asking about whether you should just use the apply feature. I think yes, because if the employer has it set up on LinkedIn to apply, that means they are open and ready to receive applications. In most cases, companies have to pay for this feature. So if they're paying for the feature, they intend to use it. And they want to make it easy for you, and you can click the apply button. Some companies, I'm going to guess FINRA. No, FINRA has it. Some companies will direct you to an outside link. And of course, I'm not finding anyone right now, maybe on USA Jobs. And it'll just, instead of apply, or even if you click apply, sometimes it'll take you to their external application website. And then of course, you're going to apply through their external. I don't think that you need to do both. If they're in LinkedIn and they're set up to take the application, then go ahead and do it that way. I'm guessing this will actually take me to an external site. Yeah, it does, right? It usually will say LinkedIn Easy Apply is applying through LinkedIn. And then you'll sometimes see this actively recruiting icon. The actively recruiting icon, according to LinkedIn, means that the organization who posted the position has been active on LinkedIn. So they've gone in and looked at applicants or marked applicants, or they've searched for applicants, or they've done outreach. There's activity related to applicants on their posting conducted by the organization who posted it. So for example, if you see one like this Amazon one 4 weeks ago, they could be sort of collecting resumes, and they could be contacting applicants outside of the LinkedIn platform. And I'll tell you, that's how I personally do it. So we collect resumes on LinkedIn for various job postings. And when I see someone interesting, I just look at their resume and call them or email them directly. I don't do it through LinkedIn. So I don't necessarily think that icon is indicative of whether they're looking at resumes or not. If you apply through LinkedIn, how do you compromise the application for the job description? It's hard. It's hard to do that on LinkedIn. So if you feel like there's a position that's like a really, really good fit and you want to draft a cover letter, then I would say you can attach that cover letter to your resume as one PDF, and then upload that PDF as your resume document. So you end up having like a multi-page resume, and then maybe the first page of your resume document is actually your cover letter, so that you can sort of force the system to take both. Or you can go, of course, you can go to their website. I mean, I would say probably 90% of these positions are going to have the posting on their website as well, right? Any large company will probably have it in both places. It's the smaller companies that might not have an external job posting website.
So Ethel, just to kind of follow up on that, so that means that if you do the instant apply through LinkedIn, it's okay to also apply on their website with a more customized, like you said, cover letter, resume, description of experience, and accomplishments, and so forth. I mean, because then that means you've got two versions of your resume out there, one through LinkedIn and then one through their website. I mean, is that okay?
It's okay. It's more work for you. I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
So if there's one you really want to customize, you can do either. You can apply through their website, or you can, like I said, because I think LinkedIn only allows you to upload one document. You have to sort of fudge that and put your cover letter and your resume in as one PDF and upload it as your resume, even though it has supplemental documentation in it. If you're concerned about privacy, then I would apply directly. And like, I think, the LinkedIn feature on the recruiter side, at least, you don't know who has access to their LinkedIn page. It's possible that it goes beyond just the HR department. So, that part of it, obviously if you apply directly to the company, especially if you have an email address, it's going directly to the person that you want them to see. But I don't think that it's necessary to duplicate. And I think that it's perfectly acceptable to apply through LinkedIn. Put it this way, I don't think you're at a disadvantage applying through LinkedIn. I think if you apply through the company website, or you apply through LinkedIn, if they have the easy apply feature like this one, it's the same. So you don't need to do both.
Thanks.
Thanks for your question. I have another one here. How much weight do recruiters give to the skills in your profile? I see another recruiter on the line, so Debbie, I would love to know your take. I don't think that there's a lot of weight put to skills in your profile by the recruiter. I think that there's some weight put to the skills according to the algorithms that LinkedIn uses. So let me tell you what I see as a recruiter when I post a job. When I post a job on LinkedIn, LinkedIn will give me the first, I think, 50 people who they think are a good match for my job posting. And the way they're doing that is they're looking at keywords in my job posting and some of the key skills that I've asked for. So like a law degree, years of experience, maybe geographic preference, practice area. And then they're sort of suggesting applicants to me. They're suggesting people to me that might not have even applied so that I can reach out to them. So in that way, the algorithms rely on it. But me personally, as a recruiter, I'm looking at much more depth in your profile and your experience than the skills section. Debbie, do you have
I totally agree. I totally agree. I unmuted because I'm sorry, I'm not on video. There's too many kids running around in the background.
Fair enough.
But I don't really look at the skills at all. And so I think that sometimes if you have like a testimonial, whatever they call those, if you have like a reference by somebody, I would put more stock into that than just whatever LinkedIn or you say your skill set is.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. One thing you can do also for recruiters that I think impacts the algorithms, although I see plenty of applicants that don't have this turned on, is the open to work feature. Many of you may have seen this. So if you go into your profile, and I think you go to, let me just check my notes here because I haven't done this in a while. View profile. And then in this drop down here, under intro, you can click this button, show recruiters and others you're open to work. So let's click this. And here you can choose the kinds of job titles you're open to, the locations, and then you can choose one of these features, right? I'm actively looking, I'm casually looking. And then here you can see who you want this to be viewable to. I strongly recommend that you just share with recruiters. Otherwise, it adds this green open to work like banner on your picture, which I presume most of you do not want. But if you just share with recruiters, on my side, when I look at candidate profiles, I can see open to recruiters. I'll be honest, if I see a good candidate, I don't care if they're open or not. I'll probably just reach out to them and say, hey, you know, I have this opportunity, would love to talk with you, see how things are going. But if I do see someone who's open, then I know that they're probably going to be more receptive to my outreach than not, right? So this is something you can turn on. Now, LinkedIn says that they do not show this open to work feature to other people in the same organization as you, so that recruiters at your company can't see that you have it turned on and that you're looking for work other places. That's what they say they do. They admit that it may not be perfect in all instances. So there is some risk that someone in your organization will see that you have it turned on, and they'll say, oh, that's interesting. This person is, you know, actively in a job search. Maybe then you just turn on, I'm casually browsing. Personally, you know, for me, I think there are plenty of people who turn it on and then forget to turn it off. So there are different ways you can play that off. But if you are actively looking, this is a feature you can use to sort of signal to recruiters that you might be looking for other opportunities. Any questions on that? Okay. Any other questions on the jobs features and how to find jobs? I'm going to switch then quickly to your personal profile. So the first thing about your personal profile, especially if you are sort of tacitly looking and not, you know, telling everyone, then, and even if you are telling everyone, I think the first thing you should do is keep your profile changes to yourself when you are making some pretty serious updates. So all of you, if you've been on LinkedIn, you see, you know, Ethel has gotten a new job, or Ethel has relocated, or Ethel has a new publication. And sometimes it's because people just add that on their profile, right? When I make a change, I can publish it to all of the people in my network. My default is to keep my changes to myself, because if I find a typo in there, I don't want everyone to know that I've changed the description on my position. So I turn that feature off, and that also just allows you to make changes without everyone knowing that you're updating and refreshing your profile, right? So to keep your profile changes to yourself, you come up here, you click the Me drop down, then you go to Settings and Privacy. And here's where you can see a whole bunch of your settings. So Purnima, to your point about who can see who's viewed your profile, this is where you would change this as well. But profile, so profile viewing options is, you know, what people can see on your profile. But this one here, share job changes, education changes, work anniversaries. You can change this to no, which means that when I make job changes, I type different things in the description, I, you know, make other changes to my profile, it doesn't broadcast it to my network. And so, especially if you're in the mode of updating your profile, I would strongly recommend turning that feature off. Okay. Okay, so we had a question about how many recommendations do you need on LinkedIn? You know, personally, I think recommendations that are sincere can help, but they're not really essential. In fact, I had a bunch of recommendations on mine that I took off of my profile. They were from my days as an associate as a law firm, and they're not really relevant to my current work. And so I actually took my recommendations off. So I don't think that you need to have any recommendations at all. And if you do have recommendations, they should have some depth and sincerity. And the person writing them should be open to then getting contacted about it. So, you know, there was this period of time when they released that people were going out and asking for recommendations. I definitely do not think you need to do that unless there's a specific skill you really want to highlight. I had another question before we started about how to make your profile stand out to recruiters. And I think the key thing here, especially because so many companies now are using the jobs feature, is looking at some job postings of the positions that you are targeting, the kinds of positions you want, and pulling some keywords from those job postings and putting them into your profile, whether it's in the summary section or in your specific job descriptions. That will help your algorithms to sort of suggest your profile to the recruiter. And that's how you can sort of stand out, right? Because you'll get like a profile match for the positions that they're looking for. Even if they don't have a job posting and then they're searching profiles, that's going to help with the search results that they get. So I think the way to stand out to recruiters is to make sure that your profile has those keywords of the industry and the types of positions that you're targeting. And they can appear, like I said, in the summary section or in the job descriptions section. Remember that only the first 3 lines of your summary section appear when in the overall profile before you have to click more. So be selective, because if I'm looking at a list of people on my screen, I might not always click more, right? So you want those key things to come up right in the first 2 lines of your profile. Other questions about profiles? Okay, the things I always say about profiles. 1, have a picture. Have a picture that is recent, that you know, sort of represents who you are. Don't have a picture. In fact, I have some examples of don'ts for pictures. So let me get back to my PowerPoint here. We're going to talk about some of these. So here's some various pictures, right? Professional headshot works best. Here are some don'ts, right? The ones that look like they're cropped from a party, the ones where I can't really see the person at all. You know, one where you're not looking at the camera, right? I think this is pretty clear. I think probably at your stage, everyone's got a professional headshot. Stick that up on your LinkedIn. Customize your LinkedIn profile. The reason I think this is useful is because it helps people understand that they're looking at the right person, number one, and also it makes it easier for them to find your profile and for you to share your profile. So your default LinkedIn URL, you can see on this screen here, mine, I've changed to just my first name, last name, APABA-DC. Your default one is probably like a combination of your first name or your first initial last name with a series of numbers and dashes behind it. And as long as you choose something that's not already taken, they'll let you customize that to anything. So I'm lucky I have a unique name and no one chooses APABA-DC. But if you have a more common name, you know, like a Jennifer Smith, then maybe you need to insert your middle initial or your middle name to your URL, okay? But it's very easy to edit your URL and the steps are right here. But you just click that me icon like I showed you before, view profile, and then there's a space where you can just type in what you want after that backslash. And then you can save it and it makes it easy for you to share your LinkedIn profile as well. It makes it a little bit more memorable. Okay. And then the final thing I have is really thinking about the headline of your LinkedIn profile, right? So I see a lot of, not so much with established professionals, but I see a lot of unemployed, looking for opportunities, currently looking in the profile, the headline. And let me just go back to my my LinkedIn page so you can see what I'm referring to here. Your headline is this. So my headline is co-founder and principal, legal recruiter and career development specialist. Put something there. Your LinkedIn defaults to your current job title and organization. So general counsel at X company. That's what LinkedIn will default to if that's your first work position. But you can customize that. You may not need to customize it if you're not actively job seeking. This comes up most frequently though with people who maybe are unemployed and so they don't have that job title and they want to still put something there. Then you can put something like, you know, corporate attorney and business strategist, or you can just put, you know, general counsel without an organization, or, you know, legal counsel and strategist, something that is not job seeking and something that is not inaccurate if you don't currently have a title and organization. In other sectors like marketing, people have very creative sort of headlines. It won't surprise you that lawyers tend to have pretty generalized title type headlines, but you can get creative. I think you just want to be careful. If you're too creative, you don't want it to, you know, come off the wrong way, right? We're in a profession that is a bit more conservative, but you'll see other titles and take a look at other people's headlines. If you see something that you like, you know, make note of it. Okay. All right, I have done a lot of talking. I'm happy to take some additional questions on your LinkedIn profile, about networking generally, especially in this virtual environment. What questions can I answer?
I have a quick question. Do you provide career advising through your company, or if you don't, do you have a recommendation as to who we should be potentially reaching out to?
Yeah, great question. So I think most people in a role like mine will do some career advising. My company and me personally, I do quite a bit of career advising just because that's my background. I was a career counselor before I became a recruiter, so it comes pretty naturally to me. I do provide some career advising for the candidates that I'm working with and sort of helping them strategize where they should apply, what organizations will be a good fit for them. If you're looking for career advising sort of on a more macro scale, some career planning, career coaching, then, you know, I'm happy to provide some recommendations of people that I often work with who really just specialize in that. Often those are people who might be thinking about leaving practice or thinking about making a pretty big transition, changing practice areas, relocation, things like that, then I'm happy to make a referral. I have a question here. If your public profile is generally private, but you choose open to job seeking, does this mean recruiters can see my full profile, or do I need to choose to publish my profile entirely? Recruiters so just like there's this premium feature, which I see someone asking about and I'll address in a minute. On the recruiting side, the recruiting product that LinkedIn sells also has tiers. And I think at the base level, and Debbie, if you use LinkedIn, you can maybe help chime in. I think even at the base level, those who are paying for the recruiting feature, even at the base level, can see your profile, whether you make it public or not. I'm nearly certain of that. So I pay the premium for the recruiter side of the product. I can see anyone's profile, regardless of if they're my connection or not, and regardless of if you've made it private. The only thing I think I sometimes don't see are people's last names. If they've chosen to just use a last initial, then I don't always see their last names, but usually I can see the resume that they've uploaded into the system. Does that help to answer your question, Deanna? If you have a follow-up, feel free to. So in short, I don't think you need to publish your profile publicly to everyone for recruiters to see it. Okay. Do I think LinkedIn Premium is worth it if you're job seeking? It's, if you're gonna pay for the premium, you need to use it, which means, you need to be using it to find premium. I think helps you search, gives you more in-depth search results, because I think under the regular version, you can only see second connections. Maybe you can see third, but I think you can only see second connections. Premium lets you see anyone, or at least up to the third or fourth tier, I think. So you can get a broader search of potential connections. So you'd have to really use that. On the job seeking side, I don't think premium does a lot with like the jobs that they show you or applying. So I view premium really as a way to expand your contact. It also, I think premium lets you send more in messages, and it lets you see more people who've looked at your profile. So it depends on if you think those features are really worth it. I never had premium until I was on the recruiting side of things. Okay, we have another question. In your experience, what are hot areas looking for in-house counsel? Debbie, I'm going to put you on the spot here. So
yeah,
full disclosure, most of my recruiting is on the law firm side, which is why my presentation is focused more on LinkedIn. But Debbie is an in-house recruiter, so I'll just defer to her.
No problem. So it's interesting in these crazy COVID times. It's been surprising how active the market still is. There have been some sectors that have slowed, but I think others have more than made up for it and are actually quite busy. And so we're seeing a ton of movement in financial services, anything healthcare related, life sciences, that has been extremely busy. Retail has been slow. Manufacturing has also been slower. So that's just generally what we've been seeing.
That's similar to the law firm side. So I can tell you, like, consumer financial services on the law firm side, super busy. Labor and employment, probably not surprising, really busy. So it seems like, and then healthcare. So it seems like there's some overlap there.
I guess I'd love to hear from you, Ethel, and Debbie. I know we have the benefit of you today as well. So thanks.
Yes, thanks for letting me lean on you, Debbie.
Oh, no problem.
I guess I would be interested to hear both of your perspectives, because this is something we were having. My company, we lost somebody recently, and we're going to have to hire. And a question that I had was, do we need that person to be close to headquarters, or can they be remote? Given this pandemic and that we don't really know what's going to happen in the future, what are you both seeing maybe in terms of like maybe I wouldn't have applied to a job where the general counsel was listed as needing to be in New York, but given that maybe nobody's going to be going to work for the next year and a half, is location as important as before?
I can certainly say from what I've seen, I've been surprised at, and I work primarily with law firms, and law firms are not exactly the fastest, swiftest moving organizations to change. But I have been surprised at how many have been open to remote work hires. And I can think of 3 different firms with searches right now where they've said that. And in every instance, I've called to confirm that it is not a temporary remote work, but that it's going to be permanent, and that they would hire someone, sitting in Kansas City if that's where their top candidate is. And in all instances, they've said yes. So I do think it's potentially a shift here that we're seeing, because everyone's been forced to do it and they can see that it works. I think it definitely depends on the level of the hire. Certainly, I think for more junior hires, there is a significant benefit to being able to train them in person when the time comes, and sort of mentoring them and, making sure that they feel connected and integrated into the organization. I think, as you get to people who are more experienced, who work on their own and who are managing their own matters, as it is, it can be easier. I mean, I would imagine that in a lot of companies, your executive leadership team might not ever be in the same place anyway, even if you do have a headquarters, right? People are always traveling to different places. And so even if everyone is, quote, based at headquarters at any given point for any given meeting, people are in other places. And so I think that employers are starting to see that. And I think we could be seeing a shift.
I totally agree with Ethel. We've had several clients who have long been very anti-telework. And now that everyone is teleworking and they're seeing no drop off in productivity, they've kind of changed their tunes a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it is and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I'll turn it back over to you, Purnima.
I want to thank everybody for coming. Ethel, thank you so much for your time and putting together this wonderful presentation. I learned a ton. I'm really excited because not only did we have DC, Maryland, Virginia attorneys, we had attorneys from New York and California join us today. And it makes me also recognize that, sort of as Debbie and Ethel highlighted, not only are opportunities to work remote, our opportunities to network and to learn with each other are just larger, given that we've all decided to go on Zoom and use these platforms. So, I want to thank all of you for coming today. If you wouldn't mind emailing me your thoughts on what we did not do well today and what we could do better so that we can continue. We have a few more exciting sessions. I think you'll be excited to know. I think some of the folks you heard from today will be back to do their own sessions for in-house counsel, and I'm really excited. I also have, some thoughts as I sort of also attend a lot of Zoom learning about if we could facilitate lunch, if we have a small group of 10 to 15 people, if our in-house committee could facilitate lunch for this group. So I'd love to get your feedback at, the in-house APABA email. All of you also have my own personal email. Please email me your feedback and thoughts. And with that, have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining today.
Thanks for having us, Purnima. And I've shared my email address there. If anyone wants to have a follow-up and connect, feel free to reach out.
And I think as a final note, we should all take the action item, please. There were 10 people on the call, linked in all of them, including Ethel. I think this is how we build our network, and this is really how we're going to leverage our connections to get to where we really want to be. So let's all take that as an action item to LinkedIn and to friend each other, I guess, on LinkedIn. Thank you, Ethel.
Great. I love it.
I'm going to clap.
Thank you.
On behalf of the group.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.